Welcome everyone. Thanks for being here at this not exactly how we wanted moment. We were of course hoping to see everyone in the physical world and hang out together, shake hands, high five and everything, but it's not the reality just yet. We'll have to do that in a couple months. Nonetheless, we wanted to use a date that we had chosen to give you guys some insights into what we're planning for the year. So we put together a bunch of slides, as we like to do, to kind of walk you through our thinking on several topics in a bunch of directions. Yeah, so these are we've kind of gone out of our way to put this on paper and in a somewhat cohesive way. They are don't pin us down on them, because they are ideas and products that we're working on. As we all know at this point, of course, the real world always has different plans and opportunities pop up, and yeah, life happens. But we did want to share what we're thinking, what we're working on, and we'll just dive right into it. I think we'll do a quick introduction, maybe, for those who aren't familiar with the team. I'm Olivier. I'm on the marketing team. I've been with the team for 3.5 years. Colby's joined me recently. How long has it been?
Yeah, I've been here since March of last year, but been in the community since about 2017. So it's been quite a long time, and yeah, it's been great. And I'll pass over to Jack.
Yeah, so I think I've followed Colby on in both regards. I think I started following Get Protocol maybe in January 2018, right as things were taking a turn. So I picked a moment, and also I've been here since maybe around June. So I'm an engineering manager here, which is kind of another word for I try and keep everyone else working. So it's a bit of a varied job, and I love it, but it kind of, a lot of it involves making sure that the team's running well and all of that. And we've got some good stuff to work on. So we hope to talk about that a little bit more today. Should we dive right into it? Let's do it.
Let's go.
I think I'll introduce kind of, there's 3 pillars that we want to talk about today. One, I would use the word obviously. Hopefully it's obvious. There's a product roadmap. We build products for our customers. That could be integrators primarily, also event organizers. It's worth saying that in this particular session, we're going to be diving in a little bit more onto the protocol and the blockchain side of things, more so than the white label. The white label continues to grow. It continues to be an excellent tool for integrators and ticketeers and event organizers. There's a lot going on in that regard, but we won't dive into it too much in this session. Just be aware that we're still scaling the white label and good work is still happening. We're going to dive a little bit more onto the blockchain relevant stuff in this one. There's a product roadmap to run through there. In terms of the token, I think we've got a few key points that we want to discuss here. There's kind of token and treasury enhancements that I think provide a lot of value to the stability of the protocol. The stability of the token as well. I'm quite, dare I say it, excited about all of this sort of stuff. I think I was going to use the word bullish, and then I decided, should I use the word bullish or not? But I've said it now. I'm really excited about some of the token economic enhancements that I think we're going to be able to look at some point this year. So we'll talk a bit about that. Third being the community, if one of you guys can.
It's an obvious one as well. I think it's one of our biggest strengths, honestly, and an element that we aim to put a lot of effort in continuously, and look for ways to improve everything, streamline everything, empower our community, basically, as an integral part of sort of daily operations in a way. So of course we thought about that, especially of course with the focus on the DAO that's coming. It's here essentially. Yeah, so it's 3 great topics. I think we've got plenty to talk about. So why don't we kick it off?
Let's keep it moving. So I wanted to talk a little bit about scaling in general, and I can and often do, unfortunately, talk at great length about this thing. Get me on one of the social medias if you want to know more. But I think scaling has been the number one word of the last year. I think most of our tweets probably had them, or somewhere there was the word scaling in probably every blog or piece of official communication. What does it mean? I think products that have rapid onboarding, product development that can go quickly because of lack of dependencies, or at least lack of kind of blocking dependencies. An organization that is ready for change, that can respond to the real world out there, and we can also capture the opportunities in front of us. It's maybe a little bit of a textbook definition, but I think we've made massive progress in this area. So in particular, a couple of the areas that I think are relevant are both the integrator / product and technical, and then also on the organization side. So I'll say a little bit briefly about the technical, in the sense that we're close to wrapping up a large piece of technical work here that should result in massive gas improvements, massive throughput, and it really sets the foundation for a highly successful year. And we're ready for whatever the world can throw at us, because it's not uncommon for blockchains to be highly competitive. We see this week in, week out. Scaling is difficult. Scaling on blockchains is incredibly difficult, and a lot of the time we take it for granted that there's a lot of marketing out there for try the new chain, or try this new layer 2, or try this new product. And the reality is that we face these problems now with existing customers that need scaling right now in this moment. We've managed to do a hell of a lot of gas improvements and throughput improvements on this, potentially going for about a 50 times increase from maybe 20,000 transactions a day, maybe up to 1 million NFTs per day on a good day. But we'll be releasing some benchmarks for that. On the organization side, I'll touch upon it briefly. We've done a lot of hiring and onboarding and best practice and protocols and all of that organizational scaling. I'm really quite pleased with how this has been. The people that we've hired, excuse me, recently have been nothing short of excellent. And we've really managed to build a team across both engineering and likewise within marketing and communications that I think are highly professional and very, very capable.
Yeah, I think it's something that really rings true across the board as of recent for the entire organization. It's really all the teams have seen a real rapid maturing and kind of a preparation for the time to come, where we've consciously also in communication with each other kind of realized, okay, we've got this first part settled, like we've managed to get to this plateau, we've got everything set up, we built this system, we have all these ideas, we have this business case. Now let's just kill it and prepare ourselves to really push it across the globe, since that's still the ambition, of course. So we've done a lot of the legwork on that front, and I think we're in a really good position to take it to the next phase.
So in terms of the roadmaps, it's always worth, Olivia kind of commented a little bit on this. It's worth just mentioning the general challenges of trying to plan out to the nth degree what we will be doing in 12 months' time from now. I think everyone knows how rapidly the blockchain space evolves. Everyone knows that, especially if you're active in certain communities, things never stop ever. And I think if we were to sit down at this stage and say we know exactly what's going to be happening in 12 months' time, and we know exactly the work items that we should be executing on 12 months from now, if I was sat on the other side of that, I'd have questions on whether we really knew what we were doing. So there is a little bit of flexibility in it. The immediate things we have a high level of confidence on, we know, and we can determine the value on them. As you move further down the pipeline and the funnel towards things that are a little bit further on the horizon, it just becomes more difficult, and it becomes more likely that things reprioritize to the changing environment. And it's worth calling that out as kind of a brief approach on how we'll be discussing some of these. It doesn't mean we haven't thought about them. We've thought about them very much in depth. We just accept that it's a changing environment and there's shifting sands, and we've just got to make sure that what's in front of us is executed on very well, and that will continue to be the approach. So how are we going to approach the roadmaps? There's possibly three main areas that I think I'm seeing in terms of the theme for the coming year. The NFTs, we want to give as much value to these NFTs as possible. We've done a really, really good job of minting the NFTs. We're getting close to being able to do NFT mints at scales that many, if not most other teams will struggle to do ever. We've got the infrastructure in place to really put them out in volume. We need to make sure that people want our NFTs. The NFTs need to do more things. They need to be more accessible, or they need to provide more obvious value to all of the parties involved, whether that is the event goers having custom artwork, whether that is the ticketing companies being able to see royalty returns on these NFTs. They're quite static, they're quite flat. At this moment in time, if we're going to be honest, we really want to advance this over the coming year. Part of that will be to unlock new revenue streams using the value adds that we're building as part of the first point. And I think another bit of focus is to make the token work for itself a little bit more. We've had some really interesting thoughts on how we can advance the treasury, make it a more stable foundation for the protocol in general. And yeah, we'll be talking a bit more about that.
Yeah, maybe an interesting side note here, or fun element of especially the value of the NFTs, which we'll get to in a little bit. But I think the nice thing currently is that we're not just thinking of this stuff ourselves at this point. Event organizers are coming in with their own ideas and their own suggestions, and they're saying, hey, what if our tickets could do this? I've heard about this, can we try that? It's way more dynamic of a process. It's not just us with a whiteboard speaking in hypotheticals anymore. So it's a very exciting prospect.
Yeah, and we really do mean it when we say this is redefining what a ticket is, right? Like this is giving an extension to the life cycle of a ticket. And we think, you know, an NFT can really unlock extra utility that just lasts forever, basically, that can constantly be plugged in and evolve and adapt.
Where 2021 was scalability, I think, to echo what has just been said here as well, I think 2022 is desirability. You may see this, it's down to my other two guests on this call, let's say, to really determine how much this will be in the Twitter feed and how much it will be in the comm stuff. But fundamentally, it will end up being a year of trying to make the product more desirable, make the token more desirable, make the community a more desirable place to spend time in. And this is going to be the running theme for the year. And you'll see that unfold as part of the upcoming topics. So without further ado, we have the first of the product items that we're looking seriously at building as part of the protocol's product estate and portfolio. Custom NFTs are a fairly critical one, and this is really something that I think a lot of customers, event organizers kind of expect, especially if they're clued up on the whole NFT side. And there's a real opportunity to start to drive in more desirability, more rarity, more, I don't know, differences in metadata, differences in content. And we're thinking about how we can build this into the platform, how we can make it easy for the customers to generate, I don't know, a special status on the NFT itself. If you are the first 10 customers, or if you have X property, or you win the random lottery, for example, NFT drops and things, I think will become part of the focus for sure.
Yeah, and it's really an extension of an artist's brand and storytelling, right? Like nowadays, artists really want to wrap their events around a specific story piece. And an NFT can be a really dynamic way to do it, right? As you said, Jack, with being able to build in different scarcity elements related to the ticket sale, be able to build a hype, and then also be able to kick that back with some on-chain revenue. You can really create something that people want to own and want to claim. And I think that's kind of the ethos, really, that the custom NFTs is being able to bring to the table. Is we want to give the option of people getting into the NFT, you know, really wanting to become part of that artist Web3 community, but not force it onto them. And custom NFTs is a massive one in being able to do that. So from custom NFTs, I think there's another one that we're seeing a great deal of potential in, which we've called fan engagement. And this one's been through a couple of names so far. The other name we had that is equally descriptive is likely NFT access controls. The NFT is the ticket gives you access to an event. How about if that ticket then gives you access to an exclusive community or to a governance forum?
where the artist or the organizer can directly communicate, engage with the fans, and not just fans in general, fans who provably went to a specific event, or fans who can, you can guarantee were part of a tour or a campaign. And there's an incredibly rich set of people, engaged fans, that the artists want to tap into on this one. And I'll stop there because I think Colby again might have some thoughts on this.
Yeah, I mean, I really think this is about an artist being able to build their own space, choose the platforms they want to use, bring those loyal fans in and give them actual participation. There's that kind of that old adage where it's like, give me 1,000 loyal fans over 100,000 people, and I really think like the NFT being able to unlock this utility where you can plug it into your community platform or give your community a vote and really wrap it all together. It's a way of being able to like foster those fans that last after an event ends. You can bring people from event to event to event, and they get to grow with the artist as the artist grows. And yeah, we're really exploring this. And actually, this is something that event organizers and artists that we've spoken to really do want. They really want to be able to engage with their fans. I think there's a bit of fatigue and friction really with current sort of solutions, and this is an answer to it. So yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, this is what they really it starts to make sense to them beyond the collectibles. We sometimes get artists or event organizers who are like, yeah, I just don't want to be like selling pictures of whatever it is, because they've got in their head somehow that that's NFTs currently, due to media or whatever reason, which is fair. But once we show them these possibilities and start talking about the long-term potential of keeping your fans close, essentially, and really fostering that, then things start to click. And we're going to probably see some really cool use cases around this topic for the year, for sure.
So I think to extend the theme of deepening the value proposition of the NFTs, this one I think is crucial. It helps almost in all areas to ensure that we have a solid pipeline for handling, dispersing, tracking, monitoring the NFT trading royalties. So if you've ever done trades on OpenSea, you'll have seen that there's potentially a 5% cut for the artist, or there's a 2% royalty fee, for example, to the creator of the NFTs. There's such a strong narrative play in place here for something like this, in the sense that the NFTs can pay for themselves. It also incentivizes event organizers and the artists and their partners and management team to really consider and take note of the value of the NFTs that they're minting. I think right now there's a lot that use default images, for example, and that is fine as a first pass. I think we can see that we've been able to demonstrate the power of the platform and the power of the foundation. But when, for instance, an artist can do a custom drop, or they can do some commissioned artwork, all of a sudden that becomes a more desirable thing. It's likely that those more desirable NFTs will start being traded more. You'll start to see more volume on those NFTs on the NFT marketplaces. All of a sudden, you are rewarded for producing the best possible NFT that you can make. And I think this is one of the key things that, while simple on the surface, I think the real value is in incentivizing everyone into the right behaviors, or to pushing forward the best possible NFTs that they can produce.
Yeah, so this is a clear example of input equals output, right? So if you put more effort into creating an interesting collectible, it's going to be traded more once it's claimed on the other side. So this is part educational. We're talking to event organizers about this also, and just kind of getting it into their brains that this is a new element that they should be thinking about with their tickets, beyond just having it used to enter an event. So very exciting. Again, lots of potential here in terms of just continuing the life cycle of tickets, and increasing the utility.
And this is also just part of the value proposition, right? An insanely huge part of the value proposition, where you can say, if the event organizer is able to trade that NFT on a marketplace at the end, and they can make a royalty, they actually pay for the ticket right then and there, So it's a really strong way of being able to incentivize people, event organizers and artists, to create these NFTs correctly. And I do think over the long term, we are going to see an event organizer and artist sort of think for multiple events. Like, how can I create this NFT to encourage people to buy, say, a ticket for the next event, or they link together and really create something dynamic where you want to hold many NFTs for multiple events. So it's exciting.
I think it's also a clear differentiator between a Web2 or even, a paper-based ticket and what a Web3 ticket can do, because you end up with a ticket that has an infinitely long life cycle with the Web2 ticket, aside from very exceptional circumstances that after scan or after check-in to an event, it just does not have value. There is no value to that little database row or the piece of paper with the QR code. People aren't buying that. There's no value to the artist. There's no value to the holder, really, apart from maybe a keepsake. But most people aren't saving printouts of QR codes these days. So I think really it is such a key driver of what can a Web3 ticket do. A Web3 ticket lasts forever now. If the artist does this correctly, it's there forever, and they can continue to see the benefits of that for a very long period of time. So we're going to move on to one that I think has been on everyone's lips for a while. Everyone's been eager to hear more about event financing and what it is. So I do want to offer a bit more insight here on how we're approaching it and what some of the key challenges are for event financing. And I think the key word on this slide, and even just in general, is the word primitive. That's how we're treating it. This is the use case that we found. This is the one that we believe is going to be the most success in the market, in the sense that it's a primitive for ticketing companies and integrators to use and leverage. So most of the software that we write typically is for the integrators and for potentially the event organizers, but at least on some of the blockchain and the protocol stuff, we're building for integrators. And when you start to look at what the integrators need, you start speaking to the integrators, it becomes obvious that trying to boil the ocean on the first pass of this release, it's not going to be successful. There's going to be challenges if we have an interface where an event organizer can go in, there's no trust-based at that point in time. They sign a message on their MetaMask and all of a sudden they've got access to 10, 20,000 USDC for an event. That doesn't make sense. It's not there yet, and I don't think the industry is there yet. Arguably, I don't think that's what the industry needs, based on all of the conversations and insights I've gathered so far. So what is it? What is event financing? I think it is a product or a primitive for ticketing companies and integrators to leverage to build a product on top of. And this is really what we do as a protocol. We are going to be offering, let's say, debt financing to integrators that can then repackage that debt, which is issued via bonds, into individual loan agreements, promissory notes. They can have direct relationships with their borrowers. That's something that we as a protocol aren't yet ready for, and I think we need to see this evolve over time. The ticketing companies are going to be the key partners in this. They are the ones that know the event organizers by name. They're the ones who can call them up if they've got a problem with the event. They can offer support. They can build a legal agreement that is binding within their country of operation. And what we do is we offer bonds to the ticketing companies that then allow them to successfully run their loan operations. So we're behind the ticketing companies. So we offer the funding that ticketing companies can use so that their event organizers can successfully run their events. I think the key thing with that is great for the ticketing companies because they have access to liquidity and debt that they would not have access to. We're offering them a product that is quite difficult for them to achieve. We also work with a smaller number of parties. It means that we can have very well-known relationships with the larger ticketing companies, and then we can see how that develops over time and continue to see what works and what doesn't through our kind of first main partners. I will briefly talk about the timeline because when event financing is when is it coming? It's a number of weeks, frankly. We're probably close to releasing a pilot of this. within maybe the next 4 to 8 weeks, give or take, and I'm going to hopefully not have to swallow that. But it's closer than you think, but it's different. It's more different than you think as well. We're close to having the production contracts ready. We're close to doing a closed test event and pilot events for this over the coming weeks. What we'll see evolve over time is the partners that get involved, which ticketing companies really take this on and run with it. From then on, we'll start to develop cleaner interfaces. We'll have slightly less low-level primitives that we're dealing with, and over time, the event financing product builds up. So it's maybe a slightly different framing. I'm incredibly bullish on this nonetheless, because I think it does have the potential to upend an industry, and finding these bonds and this debt financing, it's not easy for ticketing companies to do. I've been sat in many a due diligence call around this sort of stuff, and it's tough. It's a nightmare. It's a real nightmare, and the path that we will offer will be 1,000,000 times cleaner and simpler than what they will be able to get through traditional financial markets. So it's an exciting one, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where this one goes. Moving on, we are going to talk about something that I was hesitant to put into this, but we chatted about it a bit more, and I think there's value in showing our working out on this. And this is something I would say is less than guaranteed to happen, but it's important to show that we are thinking about the next steps. What are the next big products that we want to release and we want to develop? And branded marketplaces is something that's came up in conversation a number of times. And in the first instance, with the new scaling efforts, where every event will have its own smart contract, it becomes quite easy to offer tooling to integrators to modify their OpenSea branding, for example. That only goes so far when it comes to the ticketing secondary market. So there will be instances where naturally there will be instances where event organizers need some personal details from the attendees. It might be an age-restricted event, and then you need to collect either a birth date or an age. There might be, maybe you need first name and surname for legal reasons, for attendance reasons. And facilitating these swaps on chain for the secondary market when we move in that direction, and we're keeping that in focus. We're going to need the ability to control the user experience of those marketplaces. We want to do only the data collection that makes sense, but we want to make sure that the event organizers are able to respect and honor the on-chain transfers. I believe, will only be able to do that with a branded marketplace experience. And I think the last thing I would say about this one is it extends the white label package, because this is something that we do really well on the platform side, on the ticketing as a service side. We've got a great white label. That white label can come with an Android and iOS app that can be branded to the company that you want to launch. But there isn't yet that tail end of the experience that is also branded, at least not as a centralized-ish sort of experience where you can go onto this company's marketplace to see the NFTs of the events that they've run. And I think there's value in this, but it's important to say that we don't yet know. We don't yet know whether that this is going to be a this year thing. We don't fully know whether this will be prioritized in different ways, but it's important to just show maybe some of the future vision of the main items that we can look at here.
And also, Jack, wasn't there's also a change coming with the way smart contracts are handled per event basis, right?
Yeah, so it's in terms of the scaling efforts that we're going through right now, we found a really efficient way to make sure that each event has its own smart contract. And this is critical for usage within other tooling, for making sure that we've got a standardized NFT implementation where integrators of not just the protocol, but integrators of marketplaces and other ecosystem level tooling don't need to know what our metadata is. We can just leverage the fact that if you have an NFT in your wallet from this smart contract, it means that you're an attendee of an event. You don't need to query the blockchain for a particular event ID or anything like that. Yeah.
And the potency here then is that you can really plug these smart contract addresses into a number of different platforms, and it's far more extensible really than having to specifically query the metadata, right?
Absolutely, and I think we will see this as the first pass of the branded marketplaces, because we're going to develop tooling to make sure that if, for instance, you use OpenSea, it's the obvious example, it does the most volume. There's a few others coming up, but we want to be able to then allow an easy interface for the event organizers to go and upload their own branding image, upload your own cover image, upload your own metadata and description, and then we'll send that out to all of the marketplaces so that you have a completely universal branded experience, even on the third-party marketplaces. That's really enabled very well with the separate contracts as it splits it down per event. Yeah.
And I think this is really important, particularly when it comes to first-time users into crypto and blockchain and Web3, right? You know, if this is your first experience with this very kind of almost daunting technology, but then you're greeted with a really personal experience on the extension end, then I think it's going to make it a lot more seamless and a lot more friendly to actually get involved in an artist or event organizers community and actually have that marketplace and recognize who it belongs to.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think this is another one where event organizers, at least the ones that are clued up on NFTs, come to expect this. So it's a really pleasant surprise when we can deliver this to the event organizers that we're leading through the Web 2 and the Web 3 bridge. And then some of the more advanced clients that we have, they come and they kind of want to be able to see this by default. And I think there's opportunities to close the gap here, not only close the gap for the more advanced customer, but then bring all of the customers up towards the level where they can see the power of this thing. And there's something in this for sure. It's just figuring out exactly what the first steps are for it.
All right, brings us to token and treasury. Plenty of exciting stuff in here. There's a lot of talks always internally about these topics because they're always relevant. So here's a couple of proposals / ideas / topics we wanted to share, things we're discussing, things we're excited about internally. From various degrees of readiness, I would say. So how they will end up looking like, we will see, but we want to get these out now to share our thinking on them, and also just because we're really excited about this stuff. So let's dive into it. So protocol on liquidity is a trend you're seeing more and more within the space, crypto space. It makes a lot of sense for protocols to own their own liquidity in terms of longevity of operations. For us, there's no difference really. There's a lot of ways that this is going to benefit the operations. Of course, we are in the still somewhat unique position where we have actual token demand from a real world operation that we need to keep running no matter what. There's just no way we can ever say, oh, there's no liquidity today, or for whatever reason the token isn't available. So this makes a lot of sense for us. There's some really interesting applications on this front that are kind of being developed, and of course within the space everything changes day by day, but there's some really interesting projects we've got our eyes on, some really interesting ways of doing this that we are currently exploring, that essentially boost our operational capacity, I would say. Also looking ahead, scaling and preparing for the increased demand that we are going to see within the short to midterm. So yeah, a really exciting topic.
Yeah, and this is really about creating dependable liquidity, right? So on any specific day, there is liquidity to draw from for the specific goal of minting NFT tickets. And really that's what it's about, right? It's liquidity that is just guaranteed to do the job it's performed to do. And this is a way of doing it. I mean, in the space as a whole, there's this kind of idea of trying to circumnavigate mercenary capital. And I think that's not really a fair way of describing like liquidity providers with our community, because it's so ingrained and everyone's so on board with what we're trying to do anyway. But to create a liquidity pool that is owned by the protocol makes sense and does align with the vision of becoming a data standard and having something that can scale globally and can be used daily at a number of volumes exponentially.
I think the ability to forget about it is going to be really quite a powerful thing. As simple as that sounds, I think Olivia said it in the sense that you can't just say no to a ticketing company or an integrator that wants to use the protocol but can't buy gas because there's not enough on the market, or they can't top up for the amount that they want without a great deal of slippage. And there is a product and a system that needs to run, and it needs liquidity to run it. It's not an optional part of the token. You know, it's not boost the liquidity and more people can buy it. That helps, but if integrators can't buy it, then how do we run the product? And I think the most dependable and permanent way to solve this is having the protocol own the shares of that liquidity, and it's predictable. The community know it's there, and we can depend on liquidity existing at all times. As the conversation has developed around liquidity, I think there has been a useful and necessary advancement. Actually, I think there is almost an invention built into what I'm going to talk about here. Something I'm not seeing other protocols doing, and it also offers a great deal of benefit to our ability to deploy the treasury. Something I firmly believe is that deployment of a treasury in the correct way should be seen as a bullish thing. But if, for instance, the only way that you can deploy your treasury is by dumping the tokens on the market and reducing the market cap via a sale, because that's how it works, there's just a mismatch in the optics of this whole thing, and I think there's a lot of confusion around expectedly how do you deploy these big treasuries that we have? How do we use them efficiently? And it's a problem that not just we face. I think it's a community industry-wide thing. And the example I have in my head is even just as of a few weeks ago, I believe, Ethereum Foundation needs to sell some Ether to pay for their devs, to pay for operational costs, to advance the foundation. And they get a lot of stick for that on Twitter. They get quite a lot of grief. Ethereum Foundation, they're dumping Ether again, scam projects. But what can you expect them to do? How else can they do anything with their treasury? And I believe that if we plan in advance and we develop a strategy to build up a treasury of non-get denominated assets, we're in a much more powerful position to avoid all of these problems. It will take a while to unfold, but I believe that there is a mechanism that we've found that results in a zero inflation on net system, where the treasury balance is over time maintained intact. What we do with that is then continue to build up a treasury of non-get assets, productive assets, yield-bearing assets that could then be used to, I don't know, let's say boost staking rewards or boost integrated discounts or do new customer onboarding bonuses, anything. And with a treasury that is 100% denominated in get, I think we're really going to struggle to do everything we want to do here, because we need to play it out. We should play out that scenario where let's say we want to, I don't know, onboard new community developers via a grants program, as an example. If we stuck with get, we might find some developers. We might build a kind of fledgling community that is interested in building up their stockpile of get. We can offer them get as a reward and as a bonus for participation. I think beyond that point, what are they going to do? They're going to need to eat. They're going to need to go on holiday. They're going to need a new car or pay the rent. They're going to need to dump the get, and it's just there's this cycle where it becomes really difficult to incentivize all of the campaigns that we would want to do as a foundation and the DAO based purely on a treasury that is denominated only in get. So briefly, how does it work? I've talked a little bit about concepts. I would recommend reading and Googling for the article from Hasu, which goes into more depth and a lot more detail than I'll be able to. So that's really quite an impressive article, and I'd recommend people read it. But the mechanism itself is to offer some get available for an asset that the treasury wants to collect. So in this example, I've used USDC. let's say we sell 40 get for 80 USDC as a working example. What we can then do is put those 80 USDC into a yield-bearing asset or a yield strategy. That can then be used to repay the get that was originally offered. When it's repaid, you end up with a zero inflation system. And on top of that, finally, you're still left with that 80 USDC. Leave that in a yield-bearing strategy. You can do what you want with it. You can continue to pay for operations. You can boost ecosystem rewards, anything. And not only that, but you start to build up a treasury that is instantly deployable, has a high amount of liquidity, and fundamentally does not involve dumping the token on the people who care the most about the token. And I think we need to find a way out of this. And this is the mechanism that we're exploring right now.
Yeah, and really what you're creating here is like an exponential snowball dictated by sort of time and demand for get. And the larger the treasury will grow, the greater the opportunities for deploying it into different strategies as things pop up. You see that quite a lot nowadays with some of these new DAOs that pop up. And yeah, really, as you said, it's that counterintuitive notion of I have get, I need to sell get in order to fund things. That reduces the price of the asset, and therefore there's less funds in the treasury. You know, it's like a catch-22. So yeah, we're really excited about what this achieves.
To take the snowball effect example, I think that's really critical to the word perpetual in this, because it doesn't have to stop. Once we've retrieved the original get that was offered, we can do it all over again. It never has to end. It's a system that does not inflate the circulating supply ever. If we don't need it to, it can always return back to normal, and we can do it all over again. We can continue growing this non-get denominated treasury forever. It really doesn't have to stop, and it's a simple thing. And I think people can forget about it, but treasuries affect valuations. And take any company on any stock market, and if they have a massive treasury and a massive war chest that they are able to use for further development, Apple, as an example, they're sat on so much cash that they can't even use it. And then that affects the valuation, because the network effect is so much greater. Their ability and their flexibility to experiment and capture new opportunities is just so much greater. So I think even just for the sake of having an infinitely or perpetually, let's say, growing treasury is in and of itself, it's great for the protocol and the network. And this is something we're going to explore. It's something we need to really kind of get some numbers behind. We need to test the waters a little bit and understand where any limitations would be. But I think there's something in this for sure. So as we build up almost an ecosystem of protocol, token, and treasury features, I think it's worth diving into how best we can leverage them for all network participants. Staking, I think, is something that we see often in the social media channels. There's obviously when staking, it's a really common thing. And the key value driver, as I see it, is that it allows every network participant, whether you are a ticket buyer, whether you are an integrator, whether you are a holder or a member of the community, it really allows a common theme to emerge around how do you incentivize the right behaviors? How do you get the participants that think long-term about the protocol, that are invested in the success of the protocol? And the mercenary capital involved, I think, is it's transformed. You start to be able to develop a longer-term view on the protocol via the participants that want to get involved. It's something we've mentioned a couple of times, I think, and loosely we've said, this is something we've been exploring. I think the exploration's going really well, and this is something that I think is worth a full proposal. And I do want to kind of make sure that we are able to define something that makes sense for Get protocol. The goal here isn't just to slap a VE model on it like everyone's doing these days. It wouldn't necessarily make sense for our use case. We want to find a system that works. We want to find a system that makes sense, that will genuinely help the overall adoption and ecosystem at large.
Yeah, and for the community, this is really the mechanism that makes people feel much more ingrained in the protocol, right? Like you're able to build a community of long-term participants. Everyone feels like they're actually taking part in the protocol's activity and furthering the goals of the protocol. And it just brings people together in general. I think you see that a lot more now with these different projects that have implemented staking. So I think this is going to be very good for aligning everyone around, as you said, that long-term goal.
So I think to add to that, people are looking for a token or tokens that have interactive elements to them, and staking is going to be a part that allows people to do something with their get. Right now, it's quite difficult to actually see a use case for it for a casual holder. It sits in your wallet, and you hope for the best. I think adding more interactivity and more dashboards and more data around this thing will really encourage the right community growth.
So that takes us to community involvement. Yeah, as I said earlier, of course, this is a big part of the protocol, a big part of all three of us considerations, I would say. So we have a couple of topics we want to touch on in terms of what we see as probably interesting and relevant for the year to come. Mainly centered around just the developments in terms of publicity that's coming from the protocol, but also from integrators. And community empowerment, I think, is a big one. So let's dive right in. Yeah, so overall, the community tailwind. So this is really about, the way I see it, is taking everything that we have and kind of rebundling it. It's always good for me personally to be reminded from people coming into the project, or for me telling them about it for the first time, to actually hear it with kind of fresh ears and be like, oh yeah, this is actually, we've already got so much in what we're doing already. That's extremely interesting in terms of data, in terms of daily operations, in terms of token usage, in terms of, you know, all sorts of elements. So we are going to spend some time also kind of really pushing that out, kind of looking what can we visualize, how can we improve our comms around certain topics, and make sure we have, you know, clear narratives for people who are introduced to us. You know, we're seeing, as of especially the last month, we're seeing a lot of new interest and publicity also from podcast attendance. We're seeing a lot of feedback on that. People really get the use case, is the great news. People really understand what we're doing. It's not 2017 anymore, where we were just really convincing every single person about what we were doing and the benefits. And people are coming to us now, and people are randomly talking about this use case on Twitter, and then someone from the community says, oh yeah, you're talking about Get Protocol, and then they're in. We're in a great place now. So we just want to kind of hone the elements that we already have and make sure they're readily available. And that's going to organically lead to community growth. We're going to have a increasingly bigger presence, of course, on socials and everywhere. Also, I think directly related to our use cases, as we put out more, you know, Web3 use cases, interesting applications of tickets, that's going to get more eyeballs. It's just going to snowball from there. So that, and on top of that, of course, we've got a real interesting and great group of community builders who are helping out and have been helping out on all sides of the business. So really helping us also improve our messaging, getting out the word about certain news or developments, but also like building dashboards, data, all that stuff. So we want to make sure there's proper rewards in place for that, to keep those incentives aligned and make sure everyone is, you know, properly thanked for their time and efforts, and move in that direction.
Yeah, and then to touch upon like all that activity happening in the protocol, whether it be the community or whether it be the ticketing activity, get fuel, there's so much there. We really want to provide more touch points for the community, right? Whether that be visual or interactive. It's really important that we can create this kind of emphasis where you it feels alive, right? Like that's really what the protocol and what the blockchain is able to achieve with the transparency of all these flows. So yeah, that's something that's 100% going to be a priority for us this year.
Great. Which takes us to the white label fireworks. I'm super excited about this one. Of course, with a little bit of luck, we are seeing more and more live events around the world in general, but we're also seeing some white label integrations as of recently and in the near future. that are really hitting the ground running. Of course, there's a couple of good examples now popping up. I think Relic is a great one in the US. They really have a big game plan. They really have high ambitions, and they really are kind of taking the ball and running with it. There's, of course, with any white label integrations, it's various degrees of experience or getting started or on road to market strategies vary greatly, but we're going to see more and more white labels who are just crushing it and just carving out their own path in their markets and just doing what they feel is right. So this is going to be a really great year, I believe, in terms of seeing the white label kind of flourish and do what it's supposed to do. We're really going to just kind of be the tech provider here and just support them whenever they need it, and then just kind of get out of their way and let them do what they do best. So I'm super excited about this, and we're also kind of being challenged by these new white labels. They're saying, all right, but we can do this with tickets. We want to do this. It's really awesome. It's also helping us kind of broaden our horizon and scope, and I think there's going to be a real big domino effect from that as well, because there's only going to be more Get Fuel tickets out in the world. It's going to be more eyeballs on it. There's going to be more questions about it. It's all going to lead back to us in the end, in some shape or form. So we're just going to be there every step of the way. We're going to really spend time on kind of highlighting these use cases, getting them the support and publicity that they deserve, and just kind of watching the show. Also, it's a really cool position to be in, and very exciting to finally be here at this stage and really see it kick off like that.
Yeah.
So one thing I see on the engineering side is probably the sophistication of the feature requests that are coming from the new set of white labelers. There's quite a high level of education on the NFT side from the new next generation of customers that we're seeing, which really challenges us in the right way to make sure that the products are fit for not just the casual user that we need to kind of convince into using NFTs, or we've kind of got to, handhold them through it. It's quite common now to get requests coming in from the new white labelers that are really quite advanced and quite exciting. So it's not only us sat thinking about what can we do next, what is the next thing. It's a lot of these ideas are actually coming to us from the white labelers themselves.
Yeah, so that brings us to the next slide and the next element, which is, of course, the DAO. Yeah, what's to be said here is, of course, a logical next step that we've been working on and thinking about for a while. So we're very likely to be having the first votes this quarter, so in a matter of weeks. And the main point I think to share here is that we want to do this slowly and carefully, because we take it very seriously. We want to do it really well, and that also means we're gonna start with a scope that's perhaps a little bit limited, or at least just around certain topics, because we want to iterate and we want to improve, and we want to make sure that we take all the steps necessary to get to the end point, which is, of course, a very ambitious plan in terms of decentralization, and we're really taking that seriously. So that means starting with a clear and concise scope, and then as we all get comfortable with it from every side, and we get a couple instances on the books, we get some precedent, we all get comfortable with some mechanics around it, then we start to open it up. I think an interesting element will be also, how do we get integrators into this eventually? What elements will be interesting for them? That's all future stuff. We're going to start this in the relative short term, and we're going to learn a lot, and we're going to improve. And this is another topic where I think input from the community is going to be very valuable, and kind of checking out what people's findings are on all fronts of it. And improving as we grow.
Yeah, and I think we also really want to bring in the best talent, right, from across the crypto community. People who contribute to DAOs. There's some wonderful skill sets out there, and as we further this vision, we want to bring in people who can build, who can create, and help further the policy of the protocol. And this is kind of the best way of doing it, right? We start with a narrow scope and expand it outwards over time and bring more people in. All right, guys. So that's a wrap. We hope you enjoyed this roadmap event, but there's good news. It is not over. We are going to now jump into a Twitter space where we're going to break everything down that we've spoke about, and you can ask us any questions you have. That's going to be on our Twitter, so make sure to look out for that. Or you can scan this QR code conveniently placed in the bottom left-hand corner of the slide, and it'll take you straight to the Twitter space. And make sure to remember to claim your NFT ticket through the Guts app. There's some instructions on the Guts support documentation on Twitter if you need it, but you can claim this. It's distributed over Polygon. It's a very nice piece of artwork, if I'm not biased. And yeah, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the Twitter space.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys.